Hi, my name is Yogesh Kaushik, and I'm a Senior Director of Product Management for Cisco Tetration Product and Security Business Group. What I'm going to do for the next 20-25 minutes is talk about what Tetration is, what is a cloud workload protection, why do you need a different approach? I mean, you've been doing server protection all this time, so why do you need a different solution? And how Tetration uniquely addresses all the problems that you see today. So let's start with why do I need a different solution? Now, the biggest problem that you see today is your applications are changing. You build your data center, you run infrastructure to eventually serve applications. Those applications are fundamentally different. The digital business drives the applications in a very different direction. First and foremost, the applications are not tied to your infrastructure anymore. They're running on premises, they're going into the cloud, they are everywhere. So how do you protect them if you can't put tied to the data center? You cannot rely on perimeter-based techniques. You cannot rely on network-based techniques. You have to get closer to these applications. You have to get as close to the application as possible. Number two, these applications will change all the time. Gone are the days when you had this waterfall model, when you were going to build an application, test it, and deploy it. Now you're continuously deploying applications. So if the applications are changing all the time, you don't want security to be the bottleneck. You want agility. You want your developers to be enabled by security, not be hindered by it. So you have to do things really fast. And then last but not least, every application is different. There is no such thing as a three-tier application anymore. So what you have to do is understand that application, understand what makes it different, how the protection model for that application needs to fit the application itself. So that's what Tetration does. And we started off about 4 years ago on this journey. So let me talk about some of the first principles that we looked at. As I talked about before, anything that you build, if you're protecting workloads in today's environment, you have to do it at scale. You're not running a small shop. Most of our customers are not. You have tens of thousands of workloads. So any solution that you have has to work at that scale. It has to be able to operate at tens of thousands of machines. Number two, you can't have a solution just for container, just for cloud, just for my network, just for my firewalls. It doesn't work. It doesn't scale. It's an operational nightmare. So what you want to do is have one single solution that works across all your applications. It can define policy for containers, for your VMs, for your bare metals, on premises, and cloud. Doesn't matter what the workload is. You have to follow the workload. Number three, you also have to be able to do that at super high speed. As I mentioned before, that developers are constantly rolling out new changes. Your security cannot be this same model where you create a ticket and then wait and have a war room. You have to be able to do it at the speed at which the business demands it. And last, protection means many things. It is about segmentation. It is about containment of the threat, so the threat doesn't move very far. But it is also about understanding the environment. What are my vulnerabilities? How do I know what the vulnerabilities look like? What do I want to do about those vulnerabilities? Am I being under attack right now? How do I see exploits? How do I look at integrity of all the systems that I have in my environment? All of those things make up what workload protection means. You can't have fragmented solutions because that will only generate confusion and operational nightmare. So let's talk a little bit about what Tetration does. At the crux of it, we look at segmentation. We understand what the applications are. We define segments so the threat doesn't move very far. But we also look at vulnerabilities. We understand what your environment looks like, what packages are running. We look at every single workload, every single package deployed, every single place, whether it's on premises or in cloud. We can then tell you, do you have a situation like Apache starts? Are you vulnerable for things like that? Is it reachable? Can somebody actually launch an attack using this vulnerability? Now, most of the attacks that you saw in the recent past couple of years, known vulnerabilities exploited. The natural question is, if it's known vulnerability, why was it not addressed before? Well, it's because most of the times you don't even know. It's if you're from Woody Allen's school of thought, what you don't know might kill you. So I do belong to that school. Next thing is, so okay, I'm vulnerable. I have to go do something about it. But if I'm under attack, I want to know right away. I want to understand all my exploits. I want to see if there's any malicious behavior in my environment on my workloads happening right now. I want to be able to see if data is being exfiltrated. Do I see any signals of exfiltration of information? And then I want to tie it all to see what my system integrity looks like, what my risk posture is, what's my acceptable risk level, and how do I actually deliver that acceptable risk level. And you have to do it all in real time across thousands and thousands of workloads. That's essentially what Tetration is. It basically gives you a view of everything in your environment. We can show you all your workloads. We can show you the vulnerabilities. We can score it. You can see over time how things are progressing. Are things getting better or worse? Is your hygiene better today than it was yesterday? Are you seeing a drift in configuration? Don't rely on just the audit times. We see it all the time, right? When you have an audit, you tighten everything up. What happens for next 6 months or next 1 year before the auditors come again? Things are sort of falling apart. This will give you real-time information. It'll show you if the drift is happening. It'll tell you that you looked better yesterday and something is going wrong today. Or we found new vulnerabilities that have to be addressed now. We look at exploits. We look at your attack surface score. Everything gets tied in a single dashboard, which will tell you what your posture looks like. Now, that's just about understanding your environment. Very, very important. What you don't know might kill you, remember. So start with that, but then see what you can do about containment. See what you can do about protecting these workloads. So what we do on Tetration is we take all of this data. This is about 150 different signals from different machines. We have an agent that runs on every single workload. We also collect data from infrastructure. All of that feeds our machine learning algorithms, and then we give you what your security posture looks like, but also what your recommended policy should be. So this is essentially telling you what, if you want to tighten your security posture, what should you do? It's very actionable. You can test it. You can see if I actually take this suggestion and make these changes, does it impact my business? I had a breach 3 months ago. Is this actually going to be effective? Can I stop that breach from happening if I had the policy defined in a certain way? So that's very important. But the next thing you do is now start tightening it down by looking at what the business wants. You capture intent because all of these attributes, all of this identity, the context of application gets exposed to the policy model. So now the users, the business users, can define policy in the language that makes sense to them. Rather than saying block an IP address, they can say quarantine all machines that are vulnerable, for example. Or if I'm a CISO and I'm reading an article in Wired, I want to know exactly how many machines do I have exposed and what am I doing about it? Can I quarantine them tomorrow? How long does it take for me to do that? So you can define policy in the exact same fashion that makes sense to your business. Similarly, if I'm an app developer, I don't have to worry about all of that stuff. All I care about is I need to talk to this database, I need to serve this web tier, I need to talk to DNS, et cetera, et cetera. You define rules the way you see fit. Our machine learning algorithm then combines all of this intent, combines all of these rules in a single policy that's open format, that's standardized, that can be implemented across any plane. You can put that policy on the host. We have a host-based firewall. Remember we talked about taking security all the way to the workloads? There's a lot of advantages of that. If the policy is sitting on the workload and you're not tying it to the perimeter, let the workload move around freely. It could be a VM today. It could be spun up as a container as you refactor your application in cloud tomorrow. Guess what? Your policy is exactly the same. Let Tetration figure out what the implementation looks like and push the policy down right at the workload. But if you also want to have multiple layers of defense, if you want to put the policy in the firewall, just in case, if you want to put the policy in your network, you can absolutely do that as well, because it's an open format policy. We stream it out, standard formats, any other solution. Our solutions, whatever you've been using, whatever you love so far in your environment, you can take our policy and implement on those planes. Doesn't stop there, though. Now, you implemented the policy. If the world was that simple, we would all sleep in peace. But bad things happen. New vulnerabilities are found. New attack behaviors are found. Threat intelligence gives you a lot of that data. What Tetration also does is pulls all of this information into the platform and keeps monitoring. What was effective yesterday may not be effective today. How do you respond to that? Tetration will actually do that for you. So it's tying all of this policy in a single piece. Now, the way we deploy Tetration is not a big box, as some of you may have heard in the past. We're definitely where we started. Our primary deployment model is SaaS. Everybody, about 40% of our customers, prefer SaaS over on-premises solution. But regardless of how you deploy Tetration, whether it's on-premises or SaaS, it works exact same way. It collects a lot of data from a lot of places. Agent is our primary source, which is sitting on the workload. That gives us very rich data on what's happening on the workload, because you want to understand that application. That's the richest form of information you can get. It gives us information about packages, processes, what goes in and out of that workload, who's logging on to that workload. All of that information gets collected every second. But we also collect information from your infrastructure to enrich that context. We can pull data from your load balancers, from your firewalls, from your network infrastructure, from your cloud, from your orchestration systems like VMware or Kubernetes. Basically, anything that can make a REST call can push data into Tetration. We also take identity data, geolocation data. So this is massive amount of information that we collect and then crunch using our machine learning to provide something actionable to you and your teams. Now, all of this data that we're collecting, we're not hoarding it as well. It's a completely open solution on North as well. So you can generate alerts of everything that you saw so far, whether it's policy violations, whether it's vulnerabilities, malicious behavior in your processes. You can send it out to northbound solutions like your SIMs. If you're using Splunk or QRadar, you can absolutely use Tetration with that. You could also take all of this data out if you choose to and push into the third-party systems. The third-party system, again, same requirement. They should be able to make a REST call or be able to ingest something over a standard interface. Our policy, all the alerts, all the events, they're completely open. So to summarize, what Tetration does is a real-time and scalable solution across all your workloads, protect every single workload that you have. The policy enforcement that we do, policy definition we do, is not tied to IP address. It's tied to the attributes, context, identity of the application. It's tied to the business outcomes that we translate into a very fine-grained policy that you can implement in your environment. It is flexible in terms of how you consume it. It's offered as SaaS, it's offered as on-premises if you choose to, and it is completely open, north and south. We can pull data from pretty much any modern system. We can push data into pretty much any modern system. All we need is a standard interface or a REST call. So I would pause here and thank you very much for your time. And hopefully you've learned something new about Tetration or something that has reaffirmed your belief on what Tetration is. Thank you.